Hello and welcome to today's episode number 10, the big 10 of the Human Condition podcast. I'm your host, American Council on Exercise certified personal trainer, Kiri Jones. Spring has sprung. We have sprunged. We have moved our clocks forward. We have lost an hour of sleep, and not to be a Debbie Downer at the beginning of the episode, but it is a scientific fact that in this week, the rates of heart attack and stroke will rise, and so will the rates of car accidents due to drowsy driving. It is just the reality of the situation of synthetically shifting our clocks and synthetically trying to shift our biological clocks and circadian rhythm. But I digress because I like to think of it positively. Spring is here. We have a week of really nice weather coming up, and it is a fantastic break from what feels like just such a crappy long winter. And I live in New York, and if you're also in New York or experience weather similar to New York, you know that this winter was a repetitive cycle of it would snow, then we'd have kind of a warm day, and then it would rain, and then everything would turn into a sheet of ice. So most of this winter was damp and very slippery. I had an impossible time trying to keep up with my driveway so that it was not an ice skating rink. But because spring is here, that means that, for me at least, I will be spending more time outside because I have lots of projects to do. I actively every year try to garden, and I say try because I'm not great at it. When I say garden, I mean like vegetable garden. I like to try to grow my own food, which has been nice. There are some things I can grow really well and some things I have never been successful in growing. But it's a learning curve. I learn more and more every year. I also have fruit trees on my property that I try to tend to in hopes of getting fruit. And then I also have chickens. And there are some projects related to the chickens this year as well. That's where I get my eggs. I have egg-laying chickens. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to spend more time outside. I'm excited to spend time in the sun, try to get my levels of vitamin D up, and all the other benefits that come with spending time outside. But in today's episode, other than talking about the weather, I'm going to be talking about the most recent blog titled Staring into the Mirror, Maybe Not for Vanity's Sake. And then I will be discussing my thoughts on some common themes that I have recognized from books that I have been reading about health. So first, the blog. Back in the day, when I first started trying to work out, before I really knew what I was doing or understood anything, I would be in the gym and I would see people lifting in front of the mirror and flexing in front of the mirror, and I thought that it was silly. I was never going to be that person. I was kind of judgmental, which was wrong of me at the time, but we grow and we become more wise. And I'm sure other people have seen it too. But what I've recognized in the time that's passed since then, in the research that I've done, in the education that I have received, is that mirrors are actually a very beneficial tool to use. What they can help with is the mind-muscle connection. Meaning, say for instance, you're doing a bicep curl in front of the mirror, and you can see your bicep muscle engage as you're lifting the weight. Among other things, like, if you want to watch yourself do squats, I can't watch myself do squats. I make ridiculous faces, but if you can improve that mind-muscle connection, you can more effectively activate that muscle whenever you need to use it. And the same thing goes for flexing. If you're flexing in front of the mirror, you're staring at the part of your body that you are attempting to engage. Another thing that mind-muscle connection helps with is it's not preventative in that it will 100% mean that you will not be injured, but it will help with preventing injury caused by improper movement or improper muscle engagement. And I don't even mean like acute injury like a bicep tear. I mean, over time, if you're moving the wrong way, you can cause injury. Say, for instance, you're doing shoulder presses incorrectly. Over time, you can actually degrade the functionality of your shoulder. I have done this, not from shoulder presses. I had an acute injury. I did not rehab it correctly. I have a long-standing issue that I'm going to be forever working on trying to fix. So I'm hoping that, introducing newcomers to fitness to the mirror will help them avoid the pain and suffering that I have endured myself. And a lot of people, most people who look for health and fitness podcasts are either in the space themselves or maybe they're a health and fitness professional, but the blog itself and the topic of conversation of mirrors seems silly when you're coming at it from that perspective, but this podcast is for everybody. So who I'm speaking to now are the people who are new to the gym or new to fitness, who maybe have thought a little too much about the mirror like I did back in the day. So this little segment is for you. Now, in previous episodes, I have mentioned and discussed disordered behaviors, and for a certain subset of people, mirrors can actually be a very negative thing. If you have body dysmorphia, if you have the tendency to have obsessive behaviors about things, looking into the mirror might actually not be for you. And it takes a certain level of self-awareness to realize that maybe it's hurting more than it's helping. And a lot of times we don't recognize that we're doing the thing, but hearing it out loud, hopefully hearing it out loud is going to help that certain group of people maybe recognize the behaviors before they cause like irreparable damage or long-term damage. I am very big on helping to address disordered behaviors because the prevalence of them is just growing, and I don't think that social media is helping. So I'm here for any way that we can address this and reverse the growing trend of just negative body image, negative behaviors, disordered behaviors. I hate to see it tear people apart. But anyway, again, not to be a Debbie Downer, I would now like to, I probably spoke about that blog longer than it took to read it, but anyway, I want to focus this portion of the podcast on some common themes that I have recognized while I've been reading these books about health. And these are things that intuitively make sense, but I don't think that where people are getting their information from in terms of the general population addresses these common things enough that we are able to make the serious shift that we need to make. We, as the society, I want to say specifically westernized societies, and I'm speaking more specifically about the United States because that's where I live. I don't want to speak for other countries without the scientific backing. So I'm going to mainly address, when I say we, I'm mainly addressing the US population. But over the past few decades, we have had an increase in inflammation, metabolic dysfunction, type 2 diabetes. We've had cognitive and neurological decline has increased. So many things. Mental health. Mental health is huge, and we are in a mental health crisis. Obesity. And you would think that given the advancements in science and technology, we could reverse that or stunt it or maybe just not even be where we were at now. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And I think it's because in our pursuit of convenience, the quick solution, cost effectiveness, that we have made ourselves A, more sick, and B, less able to adapt to life, the reality of life. Because if I have an issue that I can just take a pill for, then I don't have to work to fix the problem. The work is done for me. And my mom uses this phrase. She says, we think that we have a pill for every ill. And I've heard the phrase before, but like it rings true. You can find a medication, a pharmacological solution to just about any issue you could have. And what I'm recognizing is there are simple solutions that require work. I'm not saying they're simple, but they're not easy, if that makes sense. Like, you have to work to be healthy. You could just take a pill or an injection or something to have the appearance of being healthy, but your body needs to do the work for itself in order to get stronger. That's how, immune, like flu shots, that's how they work. We are drifting towards these types of foods that are touted as healthier options, healthy alternatives to other foods that have been demonized, even though the science is there that will prove that, opinions should have changed a while ago, but we're so, everything is so deeply rooted in that there are even still people who believe that carbs are the enemy. And I want to caveat this by saying I'm speaking generally. For some people, carbs may actually be the problem, but it is not for the internet to decide that for you, and it is not for commonly accepted ideology to be thrust upon you. I mean, these are things that you need to work out with your doctor or with a nutritionist. Decide what is actually right for you based on you and not based on everybody else. And even speaking of doctors, and I want to be wary about saying this because my primary care is actually very good about this, but in reading the book Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia, he is pointing out some things that current medicine gets wrong or is not doing enough of to help with these growing epidemics in our populations. And that's not the fault of your doctor. It's just what is taught. For instance, doctors in residency programs are often forced to stay up for prolonged periods of time while doing their residency work at hospitals, even though the science exists that sleep is so important. So, we're in this precipice of a time where I think that we could now I want to say easily, but easily shift in the correct direction. But it takes work and it takes time. And unfortunately, coming from me, it just sounds like somebody who is spewing things that other people have said to sound smarter. It takes a doctorate's degree or some type of advanced certification in order for some people to take you seriously. And what I'm saying when I'm speaking about this is I have noticed these things very specifically for myself and my family. I actively participate in the society that I am talking about. I have realized that the things that I do and the actions that I take and the food that I consume may actually be increasing my risk for certain conditions in the future. And I say risk, increasing the risk, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're eating a certain thing that has a higher risk of whatever, that you're going to get it. It just means that your risk increases, that you could get it. So, in our pursuit of advancement, we are actually going the wrong direction in terms of our lifespan versus health span. And if you've never heard this term before, lifespan is the amount of years that you've lived, which admittedly has increased over the past few decades because of science and medicine, but our health span has not. And health span is the amount of years that you are living that are disease and condition free. And so if you are thinking about an elderly person in general, you're probably thinking there is a certain point in time in which they will start to decline. Either they cannot do the same things that they used to be able to physically, more aches and pains, cognitive decline, neurological decline. These are all things that mark the end of your health span. And so what I think that we need to be doing better is educating. Because even though I'm reading all these books and doing all this deep dive research and now paying attention to these things to the point of it has raised alarm bells in my head, my podcast or these books or research papers is not where people are actively going to get their information about health and fitness. They're going to social media or they're typing terms into Google that would not necessarily return a double-blind study or research paper that was conducted. And so I think that we need to do a better job about not only educating ourselves as health and fitness professionals, but also then finding a way to digest that information and then give it to clients or educate the public, because there are things that we could be doing that could have such a major net positive impact. And so I am going to be actively researching these things for myself and for my specific biology even, because I'm curious about what happens when we actually function at an optimal level. Because as a society, we function at suboptimal levels that have been normalized. So these feelings of fatigue and needing your coffee and, just these levels of inflammation in the body that can cause so many other conditions like insulin resistance and, gut health issues. We've just recognized this is just the way that we are now. And that's not fair to our bodies. So I'm going to be shifting my focus really towards how I can educate people on how to be more optimally healthy. Because not only do I want to help people engage in and build these sustainable long-term health habits, but I always say holistic health habits. And so this is part of the holistic health continuum, is being able to know what it is that affects your body and how you can then change your behaviors, your habits, or choices in order to be healthier. So I'm just going to keep reading these books and making little changes in my life and talking about these things, and hopefully not eventually end up sounding like a quack to the people who are listening to this podcast. Not that there's many of you, so maybe by the time you tune into this podcast, I might already be a quack, but I would rather be healthy. I would rather expand my health span. I would rather have more years to live and do the things that I want to do than to continuously allow my knowledge and attention to be redirected from the things that are important. So I'm going to keep doing the research. I mean, in the future, you're going to see blogs about mitochondrial dysfunction and inflammation in the body and all sorts of things, because these are the things that we need to address in order to just be healthier. I've said the word healthy like 15 times, but yeah, it's eye-opening. And I'm actually not comfortable with where I'm at. So I'm going to be making the changes too. And if you're interested in hearing more about the changes that I'm making or researching or whatever, leave a comment, email me, send me a video message. I don't know. There are several ways that you can get a hold of me, and I apologize if you have commented on a podcast and I didn't respond to it, or there was a few days in between, because I've actually deleted all social media from my phone. I would like to have a dedicated time to check my social media and to check my business stuff on my computer in my office and not on my phone and disengaged from my life. I want to practice being more present, so I have removed social media from my phone. That being said, I will do my best to respond in a timely manner. It hasn't taken me over a week to respond to anybody, and I will respond to emails and messages more quickly, unless you're a person whose sole purpose in messaging or emailing me is to try to get me to pay for your services to improve my online business, because I don't want that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Let me know if there's other things you want me to talk about in this. This topic was also partially from a comment on one of the podcasts about nutrient deficiencies, and I plan on doing research into that and creating a future blog post about it. But yeah, so I get topics of conversation from the information or comments or questions that you guys leave me. So keep doing that. It's very helpful while I sit in my office and talk to myself. But yeah, anyway, without going even further along, as I have the longest goodbyes on my podcast. So yeah, until next time.